Welcome, dear traveler. If you've been here before, welcome back. If this is your first time, welcome to this quiet corner where forgotten history lingers. Before we begin, I'd love to know, where are you listening from tonight and what time is it there? Feel free to leave a comment. It's always a comfort to see where our fellow night wanderers gather. And if you enjoy these soft, shadowed journeys through time, consider subscribing so you'll never miss the next one. Now, let's begin. The fog had come before the dawn. It curled along the stone avenues of Chang'an, soft and cold as silk. The lanterns burned low in their brackets, flame quivering within cracked glass. A lone figure crossed the deserted marketplace. His sandals whispered across frost-dark stone. Breath rose in pale spirals, vanishing into the waiting mist. Overhead, wooden eaves loomed, their painted edges dulled by rain and soot. The city was vast, too vast to fully wake at once. In some quarters, braziers still slept cold, doors barred tight against the unseen damp. In others, life stirred beneath the fog. Soft clatter of wooden buckets, the low murmur of traders counting coins in narrow rooms. In a shuttered shop, a spice merchant leaned over his ledger. Ink pooled upon the brittle parchment. A rusted key turned slowly in the lock behind him. The scent of dried ginger and clove hung heavy in the stale air. Across a narrow lane, a woman crouched by a stone basin. Her hands moved through icy water, cloth twisting beneath red, cracked fingers. The fog pressed close, wrapping her in damp silence. A child watched from the doorway, eyes wide, bare feet upon cold earth. Beyond the market's edge, a soldier paced the northern wall. His cloak pulled tight, the iron of his armor leaching warmth from bone. A lantern swayed from a hook, its glow faint against the gray. His breath misted before him. The hours dragged, each moment thick with waiting. In the scholars' quarter, a single candle guttered low. The scribe bent over bamboo strips, brush moving with weary grace. The ink was thin tonight. The air smelled of old parchment and cooling wax. Beside the writing desk, a folded letter lay untouched. A seal unbroken, the sender unknown. Farther still, where the alleys narrowed to thin veins through the city's heart, a beggar slept beneath tattered cloth. The stone beneath him was cold, slick with frost. His dreams held no warmth. Above it all, the rooftops of Chang'an rose into shadow, their silhouettes lost in a sea of gray. Somewhere beyond, the first bell tolled, low, hollow, a sound that bled into the mist. And through forgotten corridors, soft footsteps echoed. The mist deepened with each passing hour. By mid-morning, Chang'an was a city adrift in gray. Towers and gates stood as ghostly shapes, their edges blurred beneath a sky heavy with cloud. Stone streets gleamed damp beneath unseen feet. The sun, if it rose at all, remained hidden, its light no more than a pale smudge behind the veil. In the southern quarter, a bell rang out, 3 slow tones fading into the hush. Traders stirred behind shuttered stalls, their breath hanging thick in the cold. Iron locks turned with reluctant hands. Wooden doors groaned open to meet a street empty of buyers. Inside a dim spice shop, coins changed hands in silence. The merchant's fingers, mottled with age, counted each piece twice. A ledge of salt had crusted along the edge of a cracked jar. Near it, bundles of star anise lay forgotten, scent dulled by damp. Beyond the market, the narrow alleys twisted through rows of leaning timber. Here, water trickled unseen, its sound soft against stone. A woman passed beneath faded banners, her shoulders bent beneath a reed basket. The hem of her robe swept the wet earth, fabric heavy with cold. In one alley's darkest corner, a door hung half open. A thin figure moved within, a weaver at her loom. The shuttle slid back and forth beneath pale hands. Threads stretched taut beneath her gaze. Above, rafters groaned with the weight of trapped smoke. The air smelled of scorched oil and damp cloth. At the river's edge, barges lay moored in silence. Ropes strained against worn cleats. Water lapped slow against their sides. On one deck, a ferryman hunched beneath his cloak. Lantern light flickered across his weathered face. His eyes watched the mist as though it might speak. Along the east wall, guards shifted wearily beneath layered wool. Their boots rang hollow upon frost-bound stone. One leaned into the wind, spear tip resting against the parapet. Beyond the city, hills rose and fell beneath the fog, shapes without meaning, distance without measure. In the scholars' quarter, another day began beneath heavy beams. Scrolls waited upon lacquered shelves, their edges curled with age. A single candle burned at a desk, its light trembling in the draft. The scholar bent low, brush poised above the strip. Ink gathered at its tip, then fell in a single silent stroke. Within a nearby tenement, life stirred in shadows. A child coughed beneath rough blankets. His mother knelt by a small hearth, coaxing flame from brittle twigs. The pot above held thin rice water. Its steam rose pale and fleeting, lost amid the colder air. Outside, footsteps echoed upon the stair. A neighbor passed, bundle of kindling beneath one arm. No words were exchanged. Voices carried too easily here, through thin walls, across hollow floors. Silence was safer. Silence kept one unseen. At the heart of the city, beyond the carved gates of the palace, the grand hall stood empty, its stone floor cold beneath faded banners. In a side chamber, a scribe dipped his brush once more. Orders must be copied. Names must be recorded. Beyond the window, the fog pressed close against the lattice. Above the scholar's chamber, a folded letter waited still, seal broken, edges worn by restless fingers. Its words spoke of poor harvests, of sickness in distant villages. The scribe read it once more, then set it aside. Duty remained. The ink must not grow cold. As dusk neared, the first lamps flared along the outer streets. Their flames danced within iron cages, shadows weaving beneath. A lone figure paused beneath one, cloak drawn tight, breath slow and measured. The road ahead vanished into smoke and mist. Still the figure moved on. In an abandoned courtyard near the river, water dripped in steady rhythm. Beneath broken tiles, a single moth stirred, its wings trembling against the stone. The air hung thick with silence, waiting, and beneath the nave, a forgotten light flickered alone. The fog did not lift. By twilight it seemed to breathe with the city, folding in and out of alleys, trailing beneath the great tiled roofs, slipping through unseen cracks in stone and wood. Chang'an grew smaller beneath its weight. Sounds faded, shapes blurred, time slowed. A lone bell told the coming of evening. Its voice, once bold, seemed uncertain now, swallowed by the mist. Along the riverbanks, the market stalls had emptied. Stray baskets lay overturned. A torn banner drifted lazily across the damp stone. In a narrow courtyard behind the spice quarter, a child swept fallen leaves into a battered pail. The broom rasped softly against worn brick. Her sleeves hung long over thin wrists, cloth frayed and stained. Nearby, her grandmother prepared rice water by a dying brazier. The warmth was fleeting. The meal would be small. Across the square, a weaver wound silk upon a wooden frame. The threads caught what little light remained, their sheen dulled by the haze. A kettle simmered nearby, its lid rattling faintly. Steam curled upward, rising, twisting, vanishing. The weaver paused, gaze lingering upon the darkened street beyond the window. Farther along, the steps of the old temple were slick with frost. Moss crept between the stones, the carvings worn to hollow echoes of forgotten prayers. Within, a monk tended the last of the evening lamps. Oil burned low, shadows danced high upon the cracked walls. At the eastern gate, soldiers paced with weary rhythm. One stopped to adjust a leather strap, fingers stiff with cold. Another leaned upon his spear, eyes lost to the mist. Beyond the wall, no sound came. The land itself seemed to sleep beneath the thickening gray. Inside a cramped archive chamber, the scholar's hand trembled slightly. The brush hovered over the bamboo strip. Ink clung to the tip, waiting. A single word, carefully drawn. Another. The silence pressed closer with each stroke. Behind him, scrolls leaned in tired rows, their edges softened by years and dust. Near the scholar's quarters, a merchant's cart stood half unloaded. Bolts of coarse fabric lay draped across its side, damp with evening frost. The merchant counted coins beneath a flickering lantern. His lips moved soundlessly with each turn of the copper. Shadows stretched long across the stone floor. Above, in the cold rooms of the tenements, life clung to routine. A mother stitched a worn tunic by the light of a single oil lamp. Her child slept fitfully beneath patched cloth. Outside, footsteps passed in the stairwell, soft, deliberate, fading into silence. Across the city, a lone scribe copied decrees by the failing light of a single candle. The flame wavered with each draft that crept beneath the door. A sealed letter lay untouched at his side, words from a distant cousin, unopened, unread. His brush moved steadily, each line a small defiance against the night. In a forgotten alley, a beggar stirred beneath a heap of rags. His breath came slow, uneven. Beside him, an empty bowl caught stray drops of water falling from a cracked spout. The sound was constant, soft, relentless. Drop, drop, drop. Beneath the city's heart, a lone chamber held its vigil. Within, the last of the imperial scrolls lay upon a stone table. No hands stirred them now. Dust traced pale patterns across the lacquered surface. A single moth fluttered weakly against the cold air. Above, the rooftops of Chang'an leaned toward the darkened sky. Tiles gleamed with thin ice. Chimneys breathed faint streams of smoke into the mist. The night pressed closer, folding the city within itself. And through forgotten corridors, soft footsteps echoed. Night settled without ceremony. Chang'an grew quieter still beneath its heavy cloak of fog. Lamps burned low behind shuttered windows. The streets no longer echoed with voices or trade. Only the faint rasp of wind against stone remained, an unseen hand stirring the silence. In the southern ward, a baker rose before the stars had faded. His shop was dark, the hearth cold. He moved with practiced ease, laying wood, striking flint. Sparks flared, flickered, vanished. At last a small flame caught, trembling in the chill air. He leaned close, breath warming numb fingers. Outside, frost rimed the edges of wooden beams. The first batch of dough lay beneath a worn cloth, rising slow beneath the heatless dark. The baker whispered a quiet blessing over the pale loaves. Beyond the shop, the alleys lay slick with dew. Water gathered in shallow pools, reflecting the faint glow of lanterns. A lone figure crossed the stones, shoulders hunched, bundle pressed to her chest. Her steps were measured, deliberate. The fog closed behind her, erasing the path. In a nearby courtyard, a family gathered round a dim brazier. The coals glowed dull red, warmth scarcely reaching their outstretched hands. The mother ladled thin broth into wooden bowls. Steam rose in faint tendrils, soon lost to the air. The youngest child clutched his bowl with trembling fingers. Up the worn stair of a merchant's home, coin was counted beneath flickering light. The merchant's eyes were shadowed, movements slow. Drought had thinned the spice trade. Silver grew scarce. He paused, rubbing weary eyes, gaze drifting toward a sealed letter upon the shelf. Its seal remained unbroken. At the northern gate, soldiers watched a formless world beyond the stone. Their breath clouded before them, mingling with the mist. One turned his gaze inward, toward the sleeping city, toward the warmth he could not reach. A lone raven called from the battlements, voice sharp in the gloom. Deep within the scholar's quarter, a candle guttered low. The scribe's brush moved steadily across bamboo strips. Each line drew breath from the dim room. Ink pooled, glistening dark against the pale surface. Scrolls waited in quiet rows. Their words had long ceased to matter. Still they endured. Above, the narrow lanes echoed with unseen steps. A messenger moved through the fog, letter bound beneath oilcloth. His lantern swung with each stride, casting fleeting arcs of light. The sound of distant chimes marked his passing, soft, uncertain beneath the night. In a high room overlooking the market, a seamstress worked by lamplight. Needle glinted, thread pulled taut. Her fingers moved swiftly, a rhythm born of long nights. Beneath the fabric, her breath slowed. The room smelled of wax and wool. Beyond the window, the world had vanished into gray. Near the river, boats rocked gently against their moorings, ropes strained in the unseen current. A ferryman sat alone upon the dock, lantern at his side. His eyes watched the slow drift of water. Coins lay in his palm, few, worn thin. He closed his hand around them, silent. Within the palace walls, shadows gathered beneath stone arches. Courtiers passed in hushed clusters, silk whispering across the floor. In a side chamber, a lone servant refilled an inkstone. The scribe before him did not look up. His brush moved with unbroken grace. A letter lay open beside him, words traced in an unfamiliar hand. Far below, in a forgotten vault, a key turned with a sound that seemed too loud. The door creaked inward, cold air spilling forth. A single figure entered, lamp held high. Dust rose in slow spirals. The shelves stood silent, laden with relics no eyes had seen in years. Above it all, the rooftops of Chang'an gleamed faint beneath a silvered sky. Frost traced delicate patterns across tile and beam. The city breathed in slow rhythm, lost beneath the endless veil. And in the hollow dark, the breath of stone grew stronger. Dawn came unseen. The sky beyond Chang'an remained a pale, unbroken gray. The sun, if it rose at all, was a presence felt rather than seen. Its warmth a distant memory, its light diffused through the breathless mist. Beneath this pall, the city stirred once more. In the lower streets, water trickled from broken drains, weaving thin paths across the worn stone. A rat darted beneath a collapsed awning. Above, laundry hung motionless between leaning timbers, frozen stiff in the damp air. A butcher opened his stall with slow, deliberate movements. The wooden shutters creaked as they were drawn aside. Hooks swung gently from their beams. No crowd gathered. The cost of meat had risen beyond reach for many. A single slab of salted pork lay upon the counter, its edges curled and darkened. Farther down the lane, a scholar emerged from his narrow doorway. His robes hung loose, the fabric faded and thin. A scroll case was bound beneath one arm. He walked without haste, each step measured against the cold stone. The fog parted slightly at his passing, then closed behind him, as though the street had swallowed him whole. In a cramped chamber nearby, a woman ground grain beneath a worn stone wheel. The rhythmic scrape echoed through the small room. Her breath frosted the air. Beside her, a child watched in silence, hands folded in his lap. The smell of damp straw rose faintly from the floor. Along the river's edge, boats remained tied in sullen rows. Ropes, dark with moisture, groaned against their cleats. The water moved slowly, a mirror for the fog above. On one deck, a lone figure mended a torn net. His fingers worked with practiced ease, though his gaze remained distant, drawn toward the formless current. In the great market square, the first traders arrived beneath heavy cloaks. Their carts rolled softly across the frost-bound ground. No voices called out. Transactions were brief, eyes averted. A woman exchanged a bundle of cloth for a small pouch of millet. The merchant's hands lingered over the coins, counting, weighing, uncertain. Beyond the market, the alleys narrowed once more. There, a beggar crouched beside a crumbling wall. His bowl sat empty before him, rim chipped and worn smooth by time. A single coin gleamed faintly at its base, a solitary token amid the hollow silence. The man's gaze did not rise. His breath came slow, ragged. Above, in the scholars' quarter, a lamp burned low behind lattice windows. Within, a scribe worked beneath its faltering light. The brush moved steadily, though each stroke seemed to draw more from weary limbs. The scroll beneath his hand bore imperial script, edicts and orders destined for distant provinces. Beside the scribe's desk, an untouched letter rested upon a small lacquered tray. Its seal had cracked days before, yet the words within remained unread. Dust gathered upon its surface, faint traces of time slipping past unnoticed. At the northern wall, guards shifted in place, cloaks drawn tight. The morning patrol had yet to return. One soldier leaned upon his spear, gaze lost beyond the fog-cloaked plain. His companion lit a fresh lantern, its glow struggling against the encroaching gray. In a forgotten side street, a laundress bent low beside a shallow basin. Steam rose from the water in slow, languid coils. Her hands moved swiftly, cloth twisting beneath her grip. A distant bell chimed, its tone muffled and uncertain. She did not pause, and beneath the great wooden beams of a merchant's hall, rusted keys turned within ancient locks. The vault opened with a shuddering groan. Shadows spilled forth. A single torch was lit, its flame a frail sentinel amid the dark. High above, the rooftops of Chang'an pressed close beneath the low sky. Frost traced silent patterns across curved tiles. The city exhaled once more, breath slow and unseen beneath the endless shroud. And through forgotten corridors, soft footsteps echoed. The fog had thickened again. By midday, Chang'an seemed caught beneath a vast sea of gray. No sky could be seen, no horizon found. The city folded inward upon itself, its streets lost beneath the slow churn of mist and time. Along the merchants' quarter, doorways remained closed. Paint peeled from wooden beams, banners hung limp and sodden. A lone cart passed through the avenue, wheels grinding softly against the stone. Its driver said nothing. His gaze remained fixed ahead, lost beneath the folds of his cloak. In a dim storeroom, a merchant's ledger lay open upon a rough table. Ink had bled along the page where damp crept in through unseen cracks. The merchant ran a weary hand across the parchment. The numbers spoke of loss. No ships had come from the southern ports. No word of when they might. Beyond the storeroom, a seamstress worked beside a narrow window. Her needle moved with steady rhythm, silver glinting in the gloom. A garment lay spread across her lap, threadbare, patched countless times before. Outside the glass, the world was shapeless, wrapped in endless gray. In the shadow of the palace walls, a porter hauled sacks of rice upon stooped shoulders. Each step echoed faintly across the courtyard. The guards watched from beneath the eaves, their faces unreadable. The sacks would vanish into unseen stores, reserves kept for the few, while the many made do with less. Beneath the northern arch, a line of beggars sat in silence. Their bowls lay empty before them. Few passed this way now. The cold bit deeper as the hours wore on. A child nestled against her mother's side, eyes closed, breath slow. The mother wrapped her thin cloak tighter, gaze distant. Farther within the city, a scholar traced faded characters upon a bamboo strip. His hand moved with care, though the ink grew thin. A candle burned low upon the desk. Its flame wavered with each breath of cold air that slipped through the lattice. Shadows crept slowly across the walls. Beside the scholar's desk, a cup of tea had grown cold. A folded letter rested beneath it, corners stained with wax. Its words remained unread. The scholar's eyes lingered upon it for a moment, then returned to the work that waited still. In a narrow kitchen, a mother stirred rice gruel within an iron pot. The broth was thin, stretched to feed too many mouths. Her youngest watched from beneath the table, fingers tracing worn patterns in the dirt. The fire cracked softly. A single log remained. Near the river's bend, a fisherman mended his net in silence. The boat rocked gently beneath him, wood groaning with each shift. The water had grown thick with silt. Fish were scarce this season. He worked on, breath visible in the cold air. Along the outer wall, soldiers moved in measured patrol. Their steps rang hollow upon frost-covered stone. Lanterns swayed upon iron hooks, their light barely reaching the fog. One soldier paused to adjust a fraying strap. His fingers were numb, the leather stiff with cold. In a forgotten courtyard, rain began to fall, a thin, ceaseless drizzle that traced pale rivers across the stone. Weeds shivered beneath the weight of water. A lone cat watched from beneath a broken shutter, eyes gleaming in the half-light. Within a cramped archive, the scribe's brush stilled. Ink pooled upon the strip. A tremor passed through tired fingers. The candle's wick had burned to a faint red ember. He set the brush aside, gaze drifting toward the shuttered window. Beyond it, the city slept within its shroud, and beneath worn velvet the keys sang faintly once more. The rain had not ceased. By nightfall, Chang'an lay beneath a curtain of silver threads. The streets shimmered dark beneath the weight of water. Every stone, every beam, every tile seemed steeped in the cold breath of the storm. Lanterns flickered behind slatted windows, their glow blurred by rain-slicked glass. Shadows moved beyond the lattice, slow and uncertain. The city held its breath beneath the steady hush. Along the eastern quarter, a potter worked beside a guttering flame. Clay spun beneath his hands, slick with rainwater gathered through the leaking roof. The wheel turned with soft rhythm, each shape rising fragile from the wet earth. His eyes remained fixed upon the clay as though the storm beyond no longer mattered. Outside the workshop, water pooled in narrow lanes. Rats moved in darting trails beneath sagging crates. A lantern swung above an empty stall, casting pale circles upon the flooded ground. The fabric of the awning tore in the wind, one slow rip after another. In a high room above the market, a merchant paced. His footfalls were muffled by the damp. A scroll lay upon the table, its ink running where the rain had crept in. News from the southern provinces. Trade stalled, roads washed away. He pressed the scroll flat with trembling hands. Far below, a beggar crouched beneath a stone archway. His cloak clung heavy to his frame, sodden and thin. Drops gathered at its edges, falling one by one into the bowl before him. The sound of each drop echoed louder than the last. At the city wall, a soldier leaned against the cold stone. His breath came slow, eyes watching the dark beyond. The rain masked all sound. No step, no voice could be trusted. Beside him, another lantern sputtered and died. The oil had grown too thin to fight the storm. In a narrow house near the river, a mother rocked her child in silence. The child's fevered breath warmed her shoulder, thin arms clinging tight. The fire had died hours before. Only the scent of damp wood and stale broth remained. She hummed beneath her breath, voice steady though her heart weighed heavy. Within the scholar's quarter, a lamp burned in a lone chamber. The scholar wrote without pause, brush steady despite the cold that crept beneath the door. The scrolls stacked beside him swayed with each gust of wind. Ink pooled thick upon the parchment, each word a tether against the dark. Across the courtyard, a servant drew water from a cracked cistern. The rope groaned with each pull. The bucket rose heavy, rim brimming. Fingers numb, she carried it within, each step measured, careful not to spill. The floor beneath her feet was slick with the storm. At the docks, boats strained against their moorings. Ropes snapped in the night, one by one. A lone ferryman stood upon the quay, hands deep within his sleeves. His gaze followed the current, where shadows drifted beneath the surface. No voice called him home. In the palace kitchens, pots simmered upon low fires. Steam mingled with smoke, curling through the rafters. Servants moved like ghosts between the hearths, their faces drawn. Grain was counted beneath wary eyes. The stores ran thinner with each passing day. Near the edge of the city, a salt merchant opened a sealed crate. Within, the crystals gleamed faintly, dry despite the storm. Coins changed hands in silence, wet copper slipping between calloused palms. The crate was closed once more, carried into the shadows. In the depths of the archive, the scribe's candle burned low. The wax had pooled, its glow a trembling island in the dark. One last line traced the bamboo strip, brush lifting with slow grace. He leaned back, eyes closing for a moment. Outside, the rain whispered its endless song, and beneath the nave a forgotten light flickered alone. The rain eased by dawn, but the fog remained. It rose from every surface, clinging close to stone and timber. The streets of Chang'an seemed to float within it, buildings emerging and vanishing in slow rhythm, their edges softened, unreal. The river swelled beneath the mist. Its surface moved in silent ripples, carrying leaves and broken branches down toward unseen lands. Along its banks, merchants unpacked damp wares. Their voices were low, gestures slow. Few buyers came. In the spice quarter, shutters creaked open. Inside one narrow shop, the merchant ran pale fingers across a row of sealed jars. The salt had caked along the rims. The cloves smelled faint beneath the heavy air. He sighed, gaze drifting to the window where gray light pressed against the glass. Beyond the market, the weaver's quarter stood half abandoned. Smoke rose from a single chimney. Inside, a loom creaked in steady rhythm. Threads passed beneath worn hands, their colors faded beneath weeks of storm. A child watched from the corner, head resting upon folded arms. Along the scholar's walk, footsteps echoed faintly. A young student moved between the columns, scroll bound tight against his chest. The fog parted with each step, only to close behind. Above him, faded banners stirred in breathless air. Within the archive, the elder scribe paused. His brush hovered above the bamboo strip. A line of characters waited unfinished. His eyes drifted toward the shuttered window. Beyond it, only pale gray remained. Sky, stone, and memory blurred into one. A bell sounded from the palace, low, resonant, drawn long across the fog. The tone reached the farthest wards, stirring shadows from their rest. In the poorer quarters, families gathered close within narrow rooms. The rain had seeped through the walls. Mats lay damp upon the floor. A pot simmered above a weak flame, steam rising thin and uncertain. Beside it, a child stirred fitfully beneath worn blankets. A seamstress stitched beneath failing light. Her needle moved without pause, though her fingers trembled with cold. The garment would be sold by evening, coin needed before the grain ran out. Her breath clouded the air before her. Outside, a stray dog paced the street, ribs sharp beneath thin fur. At the outer wall, guards peered into the mist. Their cloaks hung heavy with damp. One adjusted a fraying strap, gaze flickering toward the dark beyond the gate. No riders came, no word from the northern pass. Only the wind moved, soft, persistent, restless. Near the river's bend, the ferryman cast his net with practiced grace. The water yielded little. He hauled the line with slow rhythm, droplets falling in a silver arc. Nearby, crates stood stacked upon the dock, goods bound for a journey not yet begun. In a dim corner of the scholars' quarter, a candle burned beside an unopened letter. Its seal bore the mark of a distant province. The scholar's hand hovered above it, then fell away. Duty first. The scroll must be finished. The ink must dry before the sun returned. Along a forgotten alley, a lone figure knelt before a weathered shrine. The incense had burned low, its smoke drifting beneath unseen currents. Coins lay scattered across the worn stone, offerings of hope or habit. The figure whispered words too soft to carry. High above the rooftops, frost traced new patterns upon the curved tiles. The city exhaled, breath mingling with mist. From far below, the sound of a lone chime rose, a fragile note drawn thin through the endless gray. And through the unseen cracks, salt whispered faintly still. Morning passed without sun. The gray sky hung low above Chang'an, pressing against the rooftops, seeping into alleys where light had not touched in days. Stone and timber wore a sheen of damp, the air cool and close. In the scholars' quarter, a bell marked the turning hour, its tone distant, wrapped in fog. The sound drifted through latticed windows, falling soft upon parchment and ink. Within a dim chamber, a scholar traced slow characters across a bamboo strip. The brush moved with deliberate grace, though his fingers ached from cold. Beside him, a pot of ink had grown thick, its surface dulled. He paused to stir it, gaze lingering upon the unlit brazier. Outside, footsteps echoed along the scholar's walk. A young courier moved through the fog, scroll case bound tight beneath his cloak. His breath rose in pale spirals. The scroll was marked urgent. Still, his pace remained measured. To hurry was to risk unseen stones, hidden cracks. In a narrow house nearby, a woman mended fishing nets. The thread slid beneath her fingers, thin, worn from many repairs. A kettle simmered in the corner, its steam curling against the beams. A single lamp cast faint light across the room. The walls held the scent of river silt and old wood. Along the market's edge, traders gathered beneath sagging awnings. Crates stood damp beneath their coverings. A merchant counted coins with slow precision. Each piece rang hollow upon the board. The trade had been poor. Too many ships lost to the flooded roads. Too few buyers with coin to spare. In a shaded alcove, a scribe unfolded a sealed letter. The wax cracked softly beneath his touch. The words spoke of rising levies, of distant unrest. His lips pressed thin. The candle beside him guttered low. The ink would wait. Some news was better left unread for a time. At the northern gate, soldiers moved through their watch. Boots struck damp stone with even rhythm. The gate remained closed. Beyond it, the road vanished into mist. A scout returned alone, cloak heavy with rain. No news, no travelers, only silence. Farther within the city, a mother prepared a meager meal. Rice gruel thinned with water. A single root sliced fine. The pot hung above a wavering flame. Her children watched in silence, eyes hollow beneath unkempt hair. The youngest coughed softly, voice raw from the damp. In the weaver's quarter, a loom stood idle. The weaver's hands trembled with chill. The cloth would not sell. The market was full of faded thread, promises that fetched no coin. She sat beneath the window, listening to the slow drip of water beyond the sill. At the river's bend, a ferryman waited. His boat rocked gently against its mooring. No passengers came. No voices called from the quay. The current moved without sound, a dark mirror beneath the pale sky. He watched it in stillness, fingers tracing the worn grain of the oar. Within the palace kitchens, steam rose in slow clouds. Servants moved like shadows between the hearths. Grain was measured with cautious hands. The stores would not last the season. Still, the bowls were filled. Appearances must be kept, even as the city thinned beneath the storm. In the lowest streets, a beggar knelt before a shuttered shop. His bowl lay empty at his side. The rain had eased, but the cold remained. He drew his cloak tighter, gaze fixed upon the worn wood. The world beyond remained distant, wrapped in gray. Above it all, frost laced the rooftops in fragile webs. Chimneys breathed faint streams into the sky. The city slept within itself, each breath drawn slow, each moment stretched thin beneath the unending mist. And deep within the stone, a voice waited still. The day unfolded without warmth. Chang'an remained wrapped in its pale veil. The air hung close, heavy with the weight of days unbroken by sun. Beneath the gray, life pressed on, each breath drawn slow, each task performed beneath the patient eye of the mist. Along the scholar's walk, stone lanterns stood cold. Their flames had guttered in the damp, leaving only charred wicks beneath glass darkened by soot. Footsteps echoed faintly upon the flagstones. A scribe passed beneath the ancient gate, scrolls bound tight against his chest. His gaze remained lowered, step steady upon the slick path. In a narrow room nearby, an elder bent above a brazier. The coals burned low. His hands hovered above them, seeking heat that barely came. Beside him a pile of scrolls waited, edicts to be copied, words to be bound in ink and bamboo. The brush moved with slow grace, each line a tether against the creeping cold. Outside, the alleys ran with water, thin streams winding between the stones. A child knelt beside one such stream, fingers tracing patterns in the flow. Her breath clouded the air. Above her, laundry hung limp, its weight too great for the worn cords that held it. Beyond the market's edge, merchants gathered in cautious clusters. Coins exchanged hands with quiet deliberation. Goods were sparse. The river had swallowed many roads. The fields had yielded little. Still, the city's hunger did not sleep. In a darkened stall, a butcher sharpened his blade. The whetstone rasped with steady rhythm. No meat hung from the beams. Only a single hen remained, feathers damp with the lingering storm. He set the blade aside, fingers lingering upon the cold steel. Within the scholar's quarter, a letter arrived upon the lacquered tray. Its seal bore the mark of a distant province. The scholar's eyes traced the faded script. News of illness, of villages abandoned to flood and sickness alike. He set the letter down with a sigh, gaze drifting toward the shuttered window beyond. At the northern wall, the watch stood silent. The fog pressed close, thick as cloth. No voice carried, no light broke through. A lone figure paced beneath the battlements. His breath rose in thin plumes, eyes scanning a world he could not see. In the weaver's quarter, hands moved with tired precision. A shuttle passed through threads faded with use. The loom sang its hollow song. Each length of cloth would buy only enough to stretch the days ahead. Still, the work did not cease. To stop was to invite hunger sooner. At the river's bend, crates stood abandoned. Ropes coiled damp and heavy. A ferryman sat upon the dock, lantern resting at his feet. The flame burned low, its light lost to the mist. He watched the water flow past, unseen shapes drifting beneath its pale surface. In the kitchens of the palace, bowls were counted beneath careful eyes. The grain had thinned beyond safe measure. Still, the portions were prepared, lavish enough to mask the truth, at least for the eyes of those who would dine above. Below, the servants moved in silence, hands steady despite the chill. Within the low streets, a woman crouched beneath a crumbling arch. A child slept in her arms, breath shallow beneath worn cloth. The rain had ceased, but the cold bit deeper still. Coins rang faintly in a nearby alley, too few to share, too many to ignore. Above, frost traced silent veins across the rooftops. Tiles gleamed faint beneath a sky still captive to cloud. The city breathed on, each hour drawn long beneath the endless gray. And across the cold beams, shadows gathered in silence. The hours passed unseen. The mist did not lift, nor did the city truly wake. Within the endless gray, time stretched thin, moments blurring into one another like ink across damp parchment. In the scholars' quarter, the air smelled of oil and old wood. A lone lamp burned upon a narrow desk. Its flame swayed with each draft that crept beneath the door. A scholar bent low, brush moving with slow, deliberate strokes. The scroll before him bore a single unfinished line. Outside, footsteps stirred upon the flagstones. A courier moved swiftly through the fog, scrolls bound beneath his arm. The letters bore the weight of distant news. Levies demanded, grain fallen short, unrest whispered beyond the northern hills. His eyes did not lift. The road ahead remained a path of gray. In a narrow courtyard, a woman spread damp cloth upon rough-hewn boards. Her fingers moved with care, smoothing each fold despite the chill. The water had seeped into every thread. Beside her, a small brazier flickered, its warmth barely more than memory. Beyond the market's edge, merchants stood beneath faded banners. Their voices spoke in low tones, eyes wary. The coin had grown scarce, the goods scarcer still. Yet each haggled over the smallest measure. Salt weighed upon trembling scales, grain counted seed by seed. Within a shuttered stall, a scribe unrolled a worn map. His fingers traced the faded lines of river and road. The routes had shifted with the floods. Whole villages marked in ink no longer stood. He sighed, eyes narrowing in the dim light. Ink pooled upon his brush, forgotten. At the outer gate, soldiers paced their watch. Cloaks hung heavy with damp. The fog pressed thick upon the stone. No word had come from the riders sent north. The road remained empty. Only the low groan of the wind marked the passage of time. In the weaver's quarter, the loom stood silent. The thread had run thin. Beside it, a child traced patterns upon the dusty floor, voice rising in soft song. The weaver listened, hands folded in her lap. The cloth would wait. Hunger could not. Along the river's bend, boats rocked with slow rhythm. A ferryman checked each knot, fingers stiff with cold. The ropes held, though frayed beneath the strain of weeks unseen by sun. He paused, gaze lost to the pale flow of the water. No ferry would run this day. Within the palace kitchens, the clatter of bowls rang hollow. Servants moved with measured grace, ladling thin broth into shallow vessels. The grain had stretched thin beyond reckoning, yet each portion was served with the semblance of plenty. The illusion must remain. At the heart of the city, a folded letter lay unopened upon a lacquered tray, its seal cracked, edges worn. The words within spoke of famine in distant provinces, of children lost to sickness and cold. The recipient traced its lines without lifting the fold. Some truths weighed heavier when named. In a forgotten alley, a beggar cupped her hands around a flickering flame. The twig bundle burned low, its warmth fleeting. Beside her, a child stirred beneath a tattered cloak. Coins lay scattered upon the stone, too few to mend the hunger they would meet. Above, frost gathered anew upon the rooftops. The tiles gleamed faint beneath the unseen sky. The city held its breath within the unbroken mist, each life drawn thin against the weight of the days. And through forgotten corridors, soft footsteps echoed. Night returned without fanfare, its edges blurred with the gray that had lingered all day. In Chang'an, the streets grew quieter still, light fading behind damp shutters, voices dropping to hushed tones. The mist remained, woven now with darkness, thicker beneath the beams and eaves. A bell rang once from the distant temple. Its tone drifted slow and hollow across the sleeping roofs. Beneath it, the stone courtyards lay slick with frost. Puddles reflected faint glimmers of lantern light, circles of warmth adrift in the cold. In the spice quarter, a merchant's ledger remained open. Ink had dried along the cracks. His head rested upon folded arms. Coins lay stacked before him, small towers leaning toward collapse. The room smelled of damp cinnamon and oil. Outside, the street was empty. Along a narrow lane, a lone figure carried a woven basket beneath her cloak. Her steps were measured, soft upon the stone. The basket's weight shifted with each movement, a bundle of herbs, a folded cloth. No voice greeted her. The air pressed close, thick with unseen watchers. Within a cramped chamber, a scholar's hand trembled above parchment. The brush moved in slow arcs, characters forming beneath pale fingers. The candle burned low, wax pooling upon the desk. A chill slipped through the wooden frame. The scholar paused, gaze lost beyond the shuttered window. Across the city, a child coughed beneath rough blankets. The sound echoed in the silence of a bare room. A mother knelt beside the pallet, wet cloth pressed to a fevered brow. The fire had long gone cold. Only the scent of smoke and damp remained. At the palace wall, guards moved with deliberate pace. Their cloaks trailed behind them, sodden at the hem. Lanterns swung from iron hooks, light blurred by the fog. Beyond the gate, the road vanished. The northern watch had yet to return. In a dim corridor, a scribe unfolded a fresh scroll. His fingers left faint smudges upon the bamboo. The ink pot had grown shallow. The candle beside him flickered. Outside, the sound of rain returned, soft, steady, like distant footsteps upon stone. Near the river's edge, crates stood beneath tattered cloth. Water dripped from their seams, pooling upon the dock. A ferryman watched the current flow past. His pole rested upon the boards. No voices called across the water. The boats lay silent. In the weaver's quarter, the loom stood idle. Threads hung loose, trailing upon the floor. A single oil lamp burned upon the shelf. Its light caught upon the frayed edges of cloth. The weaver sat in silence, head bowed. The thread had run out. The coin would not come. Along the alleyways, beggars huddled beneath broken arches. Their breath rose in thin streams. A shared brazier glowed faintly, smoke drifting between hunched forms. One turned a coin between pale fingers, too worn for market, too precious to part with. In the kitchens of the palace, steam drifted through narrow vents. The broth simmered low, its surface broken by sparse grains. Servants moved like shadows, their steps soft upon the worn tiles. The day's meal would be thin. Still, it would be served. At the scholar's desk, a folded letter waited untouched. Its seal bore the weight of distant news. Famine, unrest, lost faces. The scholar's gaze lingered upon it, then turned away. The scroll beneath his hand demanded ink. The words must endure. Above, frost etched new lines upon the rooftops. The city beneath breathed slow, each hour drawn long beneath the cloak of mist and dark. And beneath worn velvet, the keys sang faintly once more. The fog remained long after the stars should have returned. Chang'an drifted between day and night. a city caught within its own breath. Lanterns glowed faint against the dark, their light swallowed in slow waves by the endless gray. In the upper quarter, a narrow courtyard stood empty. Rain had gathered upon the stone in shallow pools. A single door creaked open. A scholar stepped into the chill, scroll bound beneath his arm. His steps left no echo. Only the soft shift of his robes marked his passing. Along the scholar's walk, lamps flickered beneath carved beams. Their light danced upon stone columns worn smooth by years unseen. A lone student crossed beneath them, hood drawn low. A letter waited within his sleeve. Its words weighed more than coin. At the river's bend, a boat swayed gently against its mooring. Water lapped slow beneath the hull. A ferryman knelt upon the deck, coiling rope between numb fingers. His gaze remained fixed upon the flow. No fare had come. Still, he waited. In a narrow shop near the spice market, the merchant counted coin beneath trembling hands. The sum fell short. It always did. He closed the ledger with a sigh, fingers lingering upon the worn leather cover. Outside, the street lay still. The fog pressed against the glass. Across a faded alley, a woman knelt beside a shallow basin. Water steamed faintly beneath her breath. Her hands moved through it with slow, practiced care. Cloth was scrubbed, twisted, rinsed. The rhythm comforted. The cold remained. At the northern wall, soldiers kept their vigil. The wind had risen, low and constant. It stirred the edges of the fog, revealing nothing. One guard leaned upon the stone, eyes narrowed against the dark. The road beyond remained empty. Within the palace archives, a candle guttered low. The scribe's brush whispered against bamboo, each stroke deliberate. Scrolls lay stacked in tired rows. The ink had thinned. His breath stirred the dust with each motion. Still, the words were drawn. In the lower streets, a mother carried her child through the mist. The boy's arms clung tight around her neck. His fevered breath warmed her shoulder. The path ahead remained uncertain, one step, then another, each drawn against the weight of the cold. Near the weaver's quarter, a loom stood silent beneath a threadbare cloth. The weaver's chair lay empty. Within the house, no sound stirred save the slow drip of water upon stone. The thread had run dry. Hunger spoke louder now. At the river gate, crates were loaded beneath the gaze of quiet guards. The grain was bound for the inner stores. Few would see its weight lessen. Fewer still would taste its yield. The ferryman watched from a distance, lantern held low. In a forgotten shrine, incense burned to ash. The scent drifted faintly through the mist. Coins lay scattered across the worn altar. A single figure knelt before it, head bowed low. The prayer was silent. Words formed beneath breath alone. Above, frost gathered once more upon the curved rooftops. The city beneath exhaled in slow, steady rhythm. Each hour passed beneath the watchful gray, unseen, unmeasured, unending. And beneath the nave, a forgotten light flickered alone. Dawn came without color. The mist remained. A soft, breathing skin stretched across the bones of the city. No warmth followed the pale light. Chang'an stirred beneath the weight of another gray day. Along the river's edge, boats creaked upon the current. Ropes groaned beneath their strain. A ferryman stood at the prow, pole resting across his shoulder. His eyes traced the water's path, though no fare would cross. The fog swallowed the far shore. In the spice quarter, shutters opened with slow reluctance. The merchant's breath fogged the glass. Inside, jars stood damp beneath their seals. The scent of anise and clove hung faint upon the air. He wiped a sleeve across the pane. Beyond it, only the gray remained. Across the alley, a woman folded damp cloth with careful hands. Each fold precise, each corner smoothed. The basket beside her brimmed with washed linen, its edges pale against the dark wood. She glanced once toward the shuttered window, then resumed her task. In the scholars' quarter, a courier waited beneath a carved arch. The scroll case in his arms held news from the northern border, messages marked with urgency. His breath rose in thin clouds, the chill deepening with each drawn moment. No door opened, no summons came. Within the archives, a scribe traced worn characters with weary grace. The brush moved steady beneath his fingers. Ink bled along the fibers of the bamboo. The candle burned low, wax pooling upon the lacquered tray. Behind him, scrolls leaned in tired rows. At the northern wall, the guards stood watch. The wind had eased. The fog pressed close once more. A rider emerged from the gray, a lone figure bent beneath a sodden cloak. The gate remained shut. Voices spoke in low tones beyond the stone. In the lower streets, a child stirred from restless sleep. The blanket wrapped tight against thin shoulders offered little warmth. Nearby, a mother ladled rice water into a chipped bowl. The steam rose faintly, its warmth fading into the chill. In a darkened corner of the market, merchants counted coin in silence. Fingers moved across worn copper, lips pressed thin. The weight of each coin spoke of days stretched long beneath hunger's gaze. No word passed between them. At the river gate, crates were sealed beneath watching eyes. Grain, salted fish, dried roots, each bundle marked and bound. A ferryman stood at a distance, hands clasped within his sleeves. His gaze followed the crate's path, though no words left his tongue. Within the weaver's quarter, a loom stood idle. Threads hung loose across the frame. The weaver sat before it, gaze unfixed. The cloth would not sell. The coin would not come. Outside, the fog pressed against the glass. Time drifted slow, without promise. In a narrow shrine, incense burned upon cracked stone. The smoke rose thin, lost beneath the arching beams. A lone figure knelt before the altar, head bowed. Coins lay scattered upon the surface, silent offerings to unseen hands. Above, frost clung to the city's bones. Roof tiles gleamed faint beneath the pale light. Chimneys breathed slow streams into the sky. The day unfolded within the mist, each breath drawn soft, each moment stretched thin. And through forgotten corridors, soft footsteps echoed. The fog had deepened once more. By midday, the city lay wrapped in its pale cocoon. Chang'an breathed in slow rhythm, its streets quiet beneath the endless gray. Only the faint creak of timber, the soft drip of water from eaves, marked the passage of the hours. In the scholars' quarter, a lantern swung upon its hook. The flame burned low, swaying with each tremble of air. Beneath it, a scribe worked in silence. The brush moved steady, drawing words upon the bamboo strip. His gaze remained lowered, the candle's glow casting long shadows across his hands. Outside, a courier moved between the columns. The scrolls within his case bore the marks of distant provinces, seals cracked and faded by the journey. His footsteps rang soft against the stone, soon lost beneath the folds of mist. Along the market's edge, merchants stood beneath sagging awnings. Goods lay covered in oiled cloth, their scents dulled by the damp. A woman exchanged thin coin for a bundle of rice stalks. Her fingers lingered upon the rough twine, gaze distant. Within a shuttered shop, a spice merchant traced the rim of a jar. The salt within had clumped, crystals worn dull. He closed the lid with care, the sound a faint click in the hush. Beyond the glass, the street remained empty. At the northern wall, the guards kept their watch. Cloaks hung heavy upon their shoulders. One leaned against the stone, breath clouding the air. His companion checked the lantern's wick, fingers numb. The flame wavered, a pale island within the gray. In a narrow alley, a child knelt before a trickle of water. Leaves floated along its path, their edges dark. The child reached out, fingers tracing the current. A voice called softly from a doorway. The child rose, steps light upon the stone. Within the palace kitchens, steam rose from shallow pots. The broth simmered thin upon the hearth. Servants moved in quiet rhythm, ladling portions into worn bowls. Grain stores had dwindled. Yet the pretense of plenty must be kept. In a dim chamber beyond, a folded letter lay unopened. Its seal bore the weight of news long traveled. The words within spoke of loss. Villages left to flood and sickness. Roads swallowed by earth. The reader's hand lingered upon the seal, then drew away. At the river's bend, boats rocked with slow rhythm. Nets hung drying along the rail, strands gleaming faint beneath the fog. A ferryman checked each knot, hands moving with tired precision. No voice called across the water. The current flowed unseen beneath its pale skin. In the weaver's quarter, the loom stood silent. Threads lay coiled upon the floor. The weaver's chair remained empty. Outside the window, frost traced new lines upon the glass. The cloth would not be finished. Hunger had drawn the weaver elsewhere. Along the alleyways, beggars gathered beneath broken arches. A brazier burned low between them, its smoke winding into the mist. One passed a bowl between thin hands, coins ringing faint within. No word was spoken. The warmth of the flame mattered more. Above, the rooftops gleamed beneath the pale light. Frost clung to tile and beam. The city exhaled in slow rhythm, its heart bound beneath the soft weight of fog and time. And beneath the nave, a forgotten light flickered alone. The mist pressed closer. By evening, Chang'an seemed to breathe beneath it. Each lantern a pale eye, each shadow drawn long and soft. The streets lay hushed. Voices drifted low beneath the eaves. Stone and wood held the cold within their bones. In the scholars' quarter, footsteps echoed faintly. A young scribe moved between shuttered doors, scroll case clasped to his chest. His breath rose in thin spirals. The path ahead was known, yet each turn seemed new beneath the deepening fog. Within a narrow chamber, an elder leaned above a lacquered desk. The brush trembled beneath his hand. Each stroke marked the bamboo with care, though the ink grew faint. A candle guttered beside him, wax pooling upon the worn tray. Outside, the market stalls stood bare. Canvas hung limp upon their frames. Crates rested beneath damp cloth. A single merchant packed dried roots with slow fingers. Each bundle bound tight, each knot drawn with practiced grace. The coins he counted would not stretch far. In a darkened shop, a cloth merchant traced folded silks. The fabric held the scent of earth and dye. No buyer would come tonight. Still, the cloth must be tended. His hands moved across the weave, smoothing its surface beneath dim light. At the northern wall, guards shifted their watch. Lanterns swayed upon the battlements. The road beyond remained lost. One soldier leaned upon his spear, gaze unfocused. The hours had stretched thin, no messenger would arrive. Still, the gate must stand closed. In a low house, a mother stirred thin porridge. The pot hung above a flickering flame. The broth was pale, its warmth fleeting. Her children watched in silence, bowls in hand. Outside, the rain began anew, a soft, steady hiss upon the roof. Along the scholar's walk, a letter lay unopened upon a stone bench. Its seal had cracked beneath unseen fingers. The parchment curled at its edges. The words within remained unread, news carried from a province unseen, unspoken beneath the gray. At the river's edge, the current moved slow and thick. Debris floated beneath the surface. A ferryman stood upon the dock, lantern held low. His boat swayed with each rise of the water. No passengers waited. The river spoke in soft tones. Within the palace kitchens, bowls were stacked beneath faint light. The grain had thinned once more. Servants moved in silence, each portion measured with care. The illusion of abundance must be preserved. Beyond the hearth, shadows gathered beneath the beams. In the weaver's quarter, cloth hung upon wooden frames. Threads glistened with damp. The weaver's seat remained empty. A single spool rolled across the floor, its path slow and uncertain. Outside, frost traced pale veins across the glass. Along the alleys, beggars huddled beneath torn cloth. A brazier burned low between them. One passed a scrap of bread between trembling hands. No word was spoken. The warmth of the flame, the weight of the crust, mattered more than speech. Above, frost crowned the rooftops. The tiles gleamed faint beneath the veiled sky. The city lay wrapped in its breath. Each hour a soft echo, each moment drawn long beneath the unbroken gray. And in the hollow dark, the breath of stone grew stronger. The fog grew heavier with the night. It pressed against the beams and banners of Chang'an, sliding down stone and wood, folding itself into the narrowest cracks. The city seemed to vanish within it, each sound distant, each movement veiled. In the scholars' quarter, a lone lamp flickered behind a lattice screen. Within, a young scribe bent low above his scroll. The brush moved slow and sure, though the ink had thinned. The candle guttered beside him. Outside, the fog pressed thick against the glass. Footsteps echoed faint along the scholar's walk. A courier made his way beneath the carved beams, scroll bound in cloth beneath his arm. His breath rose in thin ribbons. The path ahead was pale and shifting, yet the message must be carried. In a narrow shop near the river, a merchant traced the edges of a jade comb. Its surface gleamed faint beneath the lamp. No buyer would come tonight. Still, the piece remained wrapped with care. Beside it, coins lay scattered across the worn cloth. At the palace wall, guards kept their vigil. Lanterns burned low, their flames trembling against the gray. The road beyond remained empty. The silence spoke louder than any word. A lone scout returned beneath the gate, cloak heavy with damp, face drawn with wear. Within the archives, a scribe paused in his work. The scroll beneath his hand bore the seal of the inner court. Its words carried weight. Yet the candle had burned low and his eyes blurred with strain. He closed them briefly, breath steady within the hush. In the lower streets, a mother gathered cloth from beneath the eaves. Each piece hung cold and stiff. Her fingers moved with care, though they shook with the cold. Behind her, a child stirred upon a pallet, voice rising in a soft cough. Along the river's edge, boats swayed in slow rhythm. Ropes strained against their moorings. A ferryman knelt upon the dock, lantern at his side. The water spoke in soft laps against the wood. No passengers called. The night belonged to the fog. Within a dim kitchen, rice simmered upon the hearth. The broth was thin, the grain sparse. A servant ladled it with steady hands, gaze fixed upon the pot. The bowls must be filled, appearances maintained. Beyond the doorway, the shadows of the great hall lay still. In the weaver's quarter, a loom stood silent. Threads hung loose across the frame. A single oil lamp burned beside it, its light catching upon the worn surface. The weaver's seat remained empty. The night held no promise of coin. Along the alleys, beggars huddled close beneath patched cloth. A brazier burned low between them, its glow faint. One drew a worn blanket tighter, gaze fixed upon the flickering light. The warmth would not last. Still, the moment held them. Above, frost traced new lines upon the rooftops. The tiles gleamed pale beneath the mist. The city beneath breathed slow and deep, each hour drawn long. each breath held beneath the weight of the fog. And beneath worn velvet, the keys sang faintly once more. Morning came without edge. Chang'an remained lost beneath its veil. The gray sky pressed close upon the rooftops. Stone gleamed slick beneath thin streams of water. The air tasted of iron and damp. In the scholars' quarter, no bell marked the hour. The sound would have been swallowed whole. Instead, the city moved in slow rhythm, one breath at a time. Within a narrow room, a scholar traced faint characters upon a bamboo strip. His hand trembled from the chill. The ink bled across the grain. He paused, breath misting before him, then resumed, one stroke after another drawn against the silence. Outside, footsteps echoed soft and uneven. A young courier crossed beneath the carved beams, scroll case bound beneath damp cloth. His path wound through the fog, its edges uncertain. The message waited still within his hands. Along the market's edge, stalls stood draped in faded canvas. Goods remained beneath cloth wraps, too damp to tempt, too precious to leave bare. A merchant paced behind his counter, gaze fixed upon the street beyond. No buyers passed, only the fog. In a small shop, a scribe unfolded a worn letter. The parchment had softened with age. Its words spoke of poor harvests, of fathers lost to sickness. He read them once, then twice. His fingers folded the paper slow and deliberate. The ink must be copied still. At the northern wall, guards kept their post. Cloaks hung heavy, boots sunk deep within frost-bound stone. The wind had stilled, but the cold pressed deeper still. A lone scout leaned upon the parapet. His eyes searched a road that did not return. In a dim chamber, a mother wrapped cloth around her child. The boy stirred weakly beneath the folds. A small pot of broth simmered upon the hearth. Its scent filled the room, faint and thin, each breath drawn deeper than the last. Along the river's bend, boats swayed in near silence. Nets hung loose upon their frames. A ferryman stood at the prow, lantern in hand. His gaze traced the flow beneath him, dark shapes drifting beneath the pale water. The river spoke in slow tones. Within the palace kitchens, rice simmered in shallow pots. Servants moved between them in careful rhythm. The grain had thinned, yet bowls were filled with measured grace. The sound of ladles echoed beneath the beams, soft and steady. In the weaver's quarter, cloth lay folded upon narrow boards. A single spool of thread rolled across the floor. The weaver sat in stillness, gaze fixed upon the loom. No hands moved. The cloth would not be touched this day. Along the alleyways, beggars gathered close. A brazier flickered low between them. One passed a worn crust between pale fingers. No word broke the hush. The flame drew their eyes, its warmth fleeting against the cold. Above, frost clung to the city's bones. The rooftops gleamed faint beneath the pale light. Chimneys breathed slow streams into the sky. The city beneath exhaled in soft rhythm. Each moment stretched thin beneath the weight of the day. And through forgotten corridors, soft footsteps echoed. Evening gathered once more. The fog deepened with the falling light, folding the city beneath its breath. Chang'an seemed to fade beneath the gray. Its streets blurred, its voices hushed. Each flame burned smaller against the vast dark. In the scholars' quarter, a single bell marked the hour. The tone was soft, drawn thin through the mist. Within narrow rooms, scrolls were folded with slow hands. The day's work drawn to close, though the night held little promise of rest. Within one such chamber, a scribe brushed the last of his ink across bamboo. The candle had guttered low. His breath stirred the shadows upon the desk. A folded letter lay nearby, edges worn. The seal remained unbroken. Outside, a courier moved beneath the carved beams. The scroll case in his grasp held news long traveled. His path wound through streets grown pale with frost, each step drawn against the weight of the cold. At the market's edge, a lantern swayed upon its hook. Beneath it, a merchant counted coins in weary silence. The goods had thinned, the buyers fewer still. His fingers moved with care, tracing the worn edges of each piece. In a narrow stall, a cloth merchant folded silk. The fabric gleamed faint beneath the lamp. No hands had touched it in days. Still it was smoothed and stacked with quiet reverence. The cloth would wait. Coin must come. At the northern wall, the watch stood close, cloaks drawn tight against the night. The road beyond remained lost within the gray. A lone scout returned beneath the gate. His mount moved slow, breath clouding the air. The words exchanged were few. Within the kitchens, rice steamed upon the hearth. The scent drifted beneath the beams. Servants moved with quiet precision, each bowl filled, each portion measured thin. The grain would not last the season. Still, the order must be kept. In the weaver's quarter, cloth hung heavy upon the frames. Threads gleamed with damp. The weaver traced them with slow fingers, breath clouding the air. No coin had come. Yet the loom remained, a promise held beneath worn hands. Along the river's edge, boats lay in still water, nets coiled upon their decks. A ferryman watched the flow in silence. Lantern light caught upon the current, shapes drifting beneath the dark. No fare would cross this night. In a shuttered house, a mother tended a small flame. The hearth had burned low. Her child stirred fitfully upon a pallet, breath thin. She wrapped him close, voice rising in soft song. The words held no promise, only presence. At the edge of the palace, a letter was received in silence. The seal bore the weight of distant loss. A scribe unfolded it beneath dim light. The words spoke of hunger, of sickness, of silence where voices once rang clear. His hand trembled. The letter was folded once more. Within the alleys, beggars gathered near a dwindling fire. Coins clinked faint between thin fingers. The brazier burned low. One passed a scrap of cloth toward the flame. The warmth would not last. Still, they watched. Above, frost traced pale lines upon the rooftops. The city beneath drew slow breath, each hour folding into the next beneath the endless gray. And beneath the nave, a forgotten light flickered alone. Night held the city close. Chang'an drifted beneath the fog, its breath slow and shallow. Stone wore a film of frost. Wood sagged beneath the weight of damp. In the narrowest alleys, shadows pooled like water, thick, unmoving. In the scholars' quarter, lamps burned behind shuttered screens. Their glow bled into the mist, soft halos lost before they reached the street. Footsteps stirred upon the stone, light, deliberate. A scholar returned from the archives, scroll case bound against his chest. Within his chamber, the air smelled of ink and wax. The scroll was placed upon a lacquered table. Fingers traced the edges of the seal. Not tonight. The brush would wait. A single candle burned low, flame bending with each breath of cold. At the river's edge, boats rocked slow upon their lines. Water lapped against the worn hulls. A ferryman crouched upon the dock, lantern at his side. His eyes followed the drift of current, dark shapes slipping beneath the surface. No voice called. No coin would pass this night. In a corner of the spice quarter, a merchant swept his threshold. The broom rasped against the damp stone. Bundles of root and dried peel hung from beams overhead, their scent dulled by the chill. He moved with care, one sweep, then another. The fog pressed against the glass beyond. Along the market's spine, stalls stood empty. Canvas sagged beneath beads of water. A lone trader checked the lashings of his cart, fingers stiff with cold. Goods had not sold. They would not spoil tonight, but neither would they feed. At the northern wall, soldiers paced the parapet. Their lanterns swayed upon iron hooks. The watch was long. The road remained empty. One guard traced a worn charm upon his wrist, a habit born of nights such as this. In a narrow house, a mother stoked the last of her coals. The flame flickered weak, its heat fading fast. Her child slept fitfully upon a straw mat, thin arms tucked close beneath worn cloth. The mother watched, breath drawn shallow with each flicker of the flame. Within the kitchens, bowls were washed in silence. The broth had been thin. The grain stretched far beyond its means. Servants moved beneath the beams, their shadows long upon the tile. No voice rose. The clatter of pottery spoke enough. In the weaver's quarter, the loom stood idle. Threads hung loose, cold to the touch. The weaver's chair remained empty. Beneath the window, a spool rolled in slow arc, its path unhurried. Outside, frost traced the glass in creeping veins. Along the alleys, beggars gathered near a spent brazier. Ash drifted soft upon the stone. One stirred beneath layered cloth, gaze unfixed. The night would not lift soon, nor would the cold. At the palace gate, a sealed letter passed between unseen hands. The wax bore the mark of loss. No words were spoken. The scroll was carried within. Some news could not wait for dawn. Above, the rooftops gleamed faint beneath the stars. Thin, scattered, caught within the breath of fog. The city beneath exhaled in slow rhythm, each hour drawn long beneath the endless gray. And in the hollow dark, the breath of stone grew stronger. The fog remained. With each new hour, it seemed to grow thicker, folding the city inwards, softening stone and shadow alike. Chang'an moved beneath it as though in dream, each step weighted by the gray air. In the scholars' quarter, dawn was marked only by the faintest light. Lamps burned low behind shuttered screens. The scent of cold oil drifted through the halls. A lone scribe knelt before a lacquered table, brush poised above bamboo. His breath clouded the parchment. Outside, a courier crossed beneath the carved beams. The scroll case upon his back bore the marks of long travel. His path wound through streets blurred to near nothing. The road ahead was sensed more than seen. At the river's bend, boats rocked in languid rhythm. The current whispered beneath them, soft, steady. A ferryman coiled rope between stiff fingers. The knots held, though the lines had frayed. His gaze lingered upon the water, searching shapes that might not come. Within a shuttered shop, a merchant counted coin by lantern light. The copper gleamed dull and worn. His fingers moved with slow precision. The goods had thinned, the buyers fewer still. The ledger spoke plainly. Hunger drew faster than coin. Along the market's edge, stalls stood vacant. Canvas fluttered with faint breath. A trader secured his wares beneath oilcloth, gaze wary. The fog pressed close. No call would rise this day. At the northern wall, guards stood silent. The road remained lost beneath the gray. A scout returned beneath the gate, mount weary, eyes shadowed. His words were few, none carried comfort. In a low house, a mother fed her child with trembling hands. The broth had thinned with each day. Still, each spoon was offered slow and sure. The child swallowed with effort, breath shallow. The mother's eyes did not stray from his face. Within the kitchens, the pots steamed thin. The grain had stretched beyond reckoning, yet bowls were filled with quiet grace. The order must be preserved. Beyond the doorway, the great hall waited. Hunger would wear no crown. In the weaver's quarter, cloth lay untouched upon the frame. Threads hung limp, cold to the hand. The weaver sat unmoving, gaze fixed upon the loom. No coin would come. Yet the loom remained, a hollow promise drawn from habit. Along the alleyways, beggars shared what little warmth remained. A brazier burned low between them. One passed a strip of cloth toward the flame. The glow flickered, caught within weary eyes. No voice rose. The hush held them close. At the palace gate another letter arrived. The seal was marked with loss. It passed in silence between unseen hands. The scroll was carried within. Some words weighed heavier beneath the gray. Above, frost traced the rooftops in pale script. Chimneys breathed faint streams into the mist. The city beneath moved slow, each hour stretched long beneath the endless shroud, and through forgotten corridors, soft footsteps echoed. Evening returned, though no sunset marked its coming. The gray remained unbroken above Chang'an, pressing low upon tiled roofs and worn stone. The air hung close and still. No breeze stirred the mist. No star pierced its depth. In the scholars' quarter the first lamps were lit. Their glow bled softly against the pale air. Within narrow rooms, scribes bent to their work, ink pooling thick upon bamboo strips. The weight of each word seemed heavier beneath the hush. One scribe paused, gaze drifting beyond the lattice. The courtyard beyond lay empty. Frost traced its edges in faint spirals. A folded letter waited upon the sill. Its seal remained unbroken. The words within could wait another night. Outside, a courier moved through the dim streets. The scroll case upon his back bore fresh marks. Mud dried thick along its leather. His breath rose in faint clouds. Each step rang hollow against the stone. The city seemed to draw away with each stride. At the river's bend, the boats stood idle. Nets hung limp upon their frames. A ferryman watched the current with tired eyes. No fare had crossed since morning, yet still he waited, lantern resting upon his knee. In a shuttered shop, a merchant packed away faded herbs. The jars clinked softly upon the shelf. His fingers moved with care, each lid sealed tight, each bundle bound firm. The fog pressed close against the glass beyond. No buyer would call. Along the market's spine, a single stall remained open. Beneath its canopy, a woman sorted pale roots with thin hands. Coins lay few upon the cloth. Still, each sale was met with quiet grace. The hours passed unseen. At the northern wall, the watch stood close. Lanterns swayed faint upon their hooks. Beyond the gate, the road remained a pale nothing. A scout had not returned. The words passed between guards were soft, uncertain. In a low house, a mother rocked her child beside a flickering flame. The broth upon the hearth had grown thin. Still, each sip was offered slow. The child stirred weak beneath her touch. The mother's song rose faint, a thread drawn soft through the dark. Within the kitchens, pots simmered with strained broth. Servants moved beneath the beams with practiced care. The portions were measured, the bowls filled with steady hands. The pretense of plenty must be kept, though the stores thinned each day. In the weaver's quarter, the loom stood bare. Threads hung loose across the frame. A single oil lamp burned beside it. The weaver's seat lay empty. Beneath the window, frost crept slow upon the glass. Along the alleyways, beggars huddled close. A brazier burned low between them. One passed a strip of cloth toward the flame. The warmth would not last. Yet still they gathered, breath drawn soft beneath the hush. At the palace gate, a sealed letter arrived. The wax bore the mark of famine. No voice greeted its bearer. The scroll passed in silence, carried within. Some truths weighed more than coin. Above, frost crowned the rooftops. The city beneath breathed slow and deep, each hour drawn long beneath the endless gray. And beneath worn velvet the keys sang faintly once more. The night deepened without stars. Chang'an lay suspended within its shroud. Stone held the cold within its grain. Wood whispered beneath unseen weight. The city seemed smaller now, drawn inward, breath slowed. In the scholars' quarter, no bell marked the turning hour. Only the faint crackle of wick within oil signaled the passage of time. A lone scribe traced fading ink across bamboo. His hand moved with care. The scroll must be finished, though the light had dimmed. Beside him, a folded letter waited still. Its seal bore the mark of loss, yet the words remained untouched. The ink upon the bamboo mattered more, each line a thread woven through the hush. Outside, footsteps stirred faint upon the stone. A courier passed beneath the carved beams, scroll case drawn close. His cloak trailed damp across the ground. The path ahead was soft with mist. The message would wait for no light. At the river's bend, the boats lay moored in silence. Nets hung heavy with moisture. A ferryman leaned upon his oar, gaze lost to the slow current. The river spoke in hushed tones, its voice steady beneath the dark. In a shuttered shop, a merchant counted herbs with steady hands. The bundles were fewer now, each stem placed with care. The fog pressed thick against the glass beyond. No voice had called all day. Along the market's spine, stalls remained closed. Canvas gathered beads of frost. A lone trader moved between crates, securing lashings with numb fingers. The goods would hold. Whether buyers came, no one knew. At the northern wall, guards shifted beneath heavy cloaks. The road remained lost beneath the pale. A lantern swayed upon the battlement. Its glow marked no distance. A lone watchman traced a worn charm between his fingers, gaze steady upon the void. In a low house, a mother stirred thin gruel above the hearth. The broth had stretched beyond measure. Still, each portion was ladled with care. The child's breath rose faint within her arms. The song she hummed wove softly with the smoke. Within the kitchens, steam drifted slow beneath the beams. Servants moved with quiet rhythm. Bowls were filled, hands steady. The grain thinned further each day. Still, the illusion of abundance was held. A fragile thread spun beneath the gray. In the weaver's quarter, cloth lay folded upon wooden boards. Threads glistened beneath the faint lamp. The weaver's gaze held steady upon the loom. No coin had come. Yet the loom remained, a silent promise drawn thin by time. Along the alleyways, beggars shared what little warmth remained. A brazier flickered between them. One passed a scrap of cloth toward the flame. The hush around them deepened, each breath drawn slow, each glance cast soft toward the dark. At the palace gate, another letter was received in silence. The seal bore the weight of distant hunger. No word passed between hands. The scroll was carried within, its truth drawn heavier than gold. Above, frost traced pale lines upon the rooftops. The city beneath moved slow, each hour folded soft beneath the breath of stone and fog. And through forgotten corridors, soft footsteps echoed. Another day folded into gray. Chang'an remained adrift beneath its veil. The sun, if it rose, made no mark upon the stone. Time passed unseen, unmeasured. The breath of the city drew slow beneath the endless shroud. In the scholars' quarter, lamps burned long beyond their hours. The flame within one chamber guttered low, smoke curling into the chill. A scribe bent above the scroll, brush trembling in tired hand. Each stroke carried weight beyond the words. Beside him, a folded letter remained unopened, its edges curled with damp. The seal held beneath faint wax, brittle to the touch. The scribe's gaze flickered toward it once, then away. The ink must dry before thought could stray. Outside, footsteps passed beneath the carved beams. A courier's path wound pale through the fog. The scroll case across his shoulder bore new seals. marks of urgency that mattered little beneath the slow hush of the street. At the river's bend, the boats swayed faint in their moorings. Nets lay coiled and still. A ferryman traced knots with numb fingers. The water whispered low against the hulls. No fare had crossed the current today. In a shuttered shop, a merchant smoothed worn parchment. The tally was thin, goods marked fewer than the need. His hand hovered above the ink. Beyond the window, the street lay empty. The gray pressed thick against the glass. Along the market's spine, canvas sagged beneath beads of water. A lone trader secured bundles beneath oilcloth. Each knot drawn tight, each glance cast toward the pale street. No buyer had passed, no voice had called. At the northern wall the guards kept their post. Cloaks hung heavy upon weary shoulders. The road beyond remained lost. A scout returned alone beneath the gate, mount lamed beneath the frost. His words were soft, drawn thin by distance and dread. In a low house, a mother watched the last of her flame flicker. The broth had cooled. The child's breath rose faint beneath the cloth. She held him close, voice woven soft through the hush. No song remained that could warm the night. Within the kitchens the hearth burned slow. Bowls were filled with thin grain, hands moving in rhythm long practiced. The portions grew smaller, the faces more drawn. Still, each gesture held steady, a ritual bound by duty. In the weaver's quarter the loom stood untouched. Cloth gathered dust upon its frame. The weaver traced thread between pale fingers. No coin would come. Yet the habit remained. A thread pulled soft against the hush of thought. Along the alleyways, beggars gathered beneath stone arches. A brazier flickered low. One passed a strip of cloth toward the flame. Its glow caught within hollow eyes. No word broke the silence. Only breath drawn thin against the cold. At the palace gate, a sealed letter passed between unseen hands. The wax bore the mark of famine. No voice spoke its truth aloud. The scroll was carried within, its weight drawn deep beneath the folds of the day. Above, frost crowned the rooftops in pale shimmer. Chimneys breathed faint streams into the sky. The city beneath moved slow, each breath folded soft beneath the endless gray. And beneath the nave a forgotten light flickered alone. The city did not wake. Morning passed unnoticed beneath the fog. No bell rang. No call rose from the markets. Chang'an remained still beneath its pale shroud, each breath drawn soft, each shadow stretched thin. In the scholars' quarter, lamps burned long past dawn. Their glow bled faint into the mist beyond the lattice. Within one chamber, a scribe traced slow lines across bamboo. The ink grew thin beneath the brush. Still, the words were drawn, one breath at a time. Beside him, a folded letter lay untouched, its seal marked by famine's weight. The scribe's hand hovered above it, then drew away. Some words could wait beneath the gray. Outside, a courier moved beneath the carved beams. The scroll case upon his shoulder bore no new mark, yet the message remained. His path wound through silent streets, each step guided more by memory than by sight. At the river's edge, boats rocked slow upon the current. Nets hung limp. A ferryman stood upon the dock, lantern dark at his feet. The water spoke in muted tones beneath the fog. No fare had come. Still, he waited. In a shuttered shop, a merchant counted coin in dim light, each piece traced with careful fingers. The tally fell short. Outside, the street lay empty. The breath of the city pressed close against the glass. Along the market's spine, stalls stood vacant, canvas drawn tight against unseen watchers. A lone trader secured her wares with weary hands. The coin would not stretch. Still, each knot was bound with care. At the northern wall, guards held their watch, cloaks stiff with frost. The road beyond remained a pale unknown. A rider had not returned. No voice spoke it aloud, yet each eye traced the horizon with wary gaze. In a low house, a mother rocked her child beside the hearth. The broth had grown cold. Her voice rose soft, a song drawn thin by hunger. The child stirred beneath her arms, breath shallow. The night would hold them close. Within the kitchens, steam drifted slow beneath dark beams. Bowls were filled with practiced grace. The portions thinned. The faces wore no mask of plenty. Yet still the gesture remained, each ladle drawn with care. In the weaver's quarter, cloth lay untouched. Threads gathered dust upon the loom. The weaver traced them with pale fingers, gaze distant. No work would call her this day. Still she sat, breath woven with the hush. Along the alleyways, beggars huddled near a cold brazier. The last of the wood burned to ash. One passed a scrap of cloth toward the embers. The glow caught faint within hollow eyes. No voice rose. The hush held them close. At the palace gate another letter arrived. The seal bore famine's mark. No words passed between hands. The scroll was carried within, its truth folded beneath the hush. Above, frost traced soft veins across the rooftops. The city beneath breathed slow, each hour stretched thin beneath the endless gray. And through the unseen cracks, salt whispered faintly still. Another day slipped beneath the fog. The light grew no stronger. The stone of Chang'an held the chill close. Voices rose seldom. Footsteps moved soft against the damp streets. The city seemed to draw smaller with each passing hour. In the scholars' quarter, lamps burned dim within shuttered rooms. Their glow touched the edges of scrolls, stacks leaning beneath their weight. A lone scribe worked in silence, brush tracing worn bamboo. Ink spread slow across the grain, each word drawn from fading breath. Beside him a letter lay untouched, its seal brittle with age. Hunger spoke within its folds. The scribe's gaze lingered, then turned away. The words upon the bamboo could not wait. Outside, a courier's path wound through narrow lanes. His scroll case bore the weight of distant news. The road blurred beneath the fog, each step marked more by memory than by sight. At the river's bend, boats swayed faint in still water. Nets hung loose across their rails. A ferryman leaned upon his pole, gaze fixed upon the gray flow. No voice called. No coin would cross. Yet still he stood. In a shuttered shop, a merchant traced faded marks upon a ledger. The sums thinned with each line. Goods would not last the week. His breath clouded the air. The ink dried beneath cold fingers. Along the market's spine, stalls remained bare. Canvas sagged beneath unseen weight. A lone trader secured her wares beneath thick cloth. No buyer passed. The silence pressed thick upon the stones. At the northern wall, guards stood close, their cloaks stiff with frost. The road beyond remained lost. No rider had come. The lantern's light swayed, reaching no distance. Beneath their breath, no words rose. In a low house, a mother wrapped her child in thin cloth. The hearth lay cold. The broth had long since cooled. Her song wove soft beneath the hush. The child stirred faintly, breath drawn thin against her shoulder. Within the kitchens, steam rose in pale ribbons. Servants moved slow between the hearths. Each bowl held less. Each face wore the knowing. Yet still the gesture remained, each ladle drawn with steady hands. In the weaver's quarter, cloth lay folded in dust, the loom untouched. The weaver's seat remained empty. Beneath the window, a spool rolled silent upon the floor. The light caught upon its curve, faint and thin. Along the alleyways, beggars gathered beneath stone arches. A brazier burned low. One passed a strip of cloth toward the flame. Its glow flickered within hollow eyes. The hush deepened. No voice broke the breath of the dark. At the palace gate another letter arrived. The wax bore the mark of loss. No words passed between unseen hands. The scroll was carried within, its truth folded beneath the folds of the day. Above, frost crowned the rooftops once more. The city beneath exhaled slow, each hour drawn long beneath the breath of stone and fog. And beneath worn velvet, the keys sang faintly once more. Night fell without ceremony. Chang'an remained adrift within the gray. The fog pressed close, weaving through beam and stone, softening the edges of the world. No stars marked the sky. No moon traced the rooftops. The city breathed in shadows. In the scholars' quarter, a single lamp burned within a narrow chamber. Its light caught upon the brush's tip, trembling with each stroke. A scribe bent low above the bamboo. Ink spread thin, words drawn slow beneath weary hand. Beside him the letter remained, its seal dulled with frost. The message within spoke of famine and silence. Yet still the scroll beneath his brush demanded ink, each line a tether drawn beneath the dark. Outside, a courier moved beneath the carved beams. His scroll case bore the weight of distant news. The path wound narrow between shuttered stalls. Footsteps echoed soft beneath the hush. No eyes met his passing. At the river's bend, the boats rocked slow within their moorings. Nets hung in damp coils. A ferryman traced the railing with pale fingers. The water whispered beneath him, its voice soft as breath. No fare would cross this night. In a shuttered shop, a merchant counted coin with trembling hands. The sum lay thin upon the cloth. Goods had dwindled, hope thinner still. Beyond the window, the street stood empty, its breath drawn beneath the fold of mist. Along the market's spine, stalls lay beneath sagging canvas. A lone trader secured her bundles in silence. The knots pulled tight. The breath she drew was slow. No buyer called. No promise rose with the dark. At the northern wall, guards kept their watch, cloaks drawn close. The road beyond remained unseen. Lanterns swayed upon the stone. A lone scout returned beneath the gate. His words were few. The silence behind them spoke louder still. In a low house, a mother warmed thin broth above a pale flame. Her child lay wrapped beneath worn cloth, each breath drawn slow. The mother's song rose faint, a thread woven soft against the dark. No hour marked their passing. Within the kitchens, bowls were stacked with careful hands. The portions thinned beneath each ladle. Yet still, the ritual remained, each movement measured, each glance held steady. Hunger wore no crown here, only quiet grace. In the weaver's quarter, the loom stood silent. Threads hung loose. A single oil lamp burned faint. The weaver's gaze traced the warp and weft in stillness. No cloth would be drawn, yet the seat remained, a promise held beneath the hush. Along the alleyways, beggars gathered near a dying flame. Ash drifted soft upon the stone. One passed a scrap of cloth toward the embers. The glow flickered once more. No word rose. The hush held them close. At the palace gate, another letter arrived. The seal bore the weight of distant loss. No words passed between unseen hands. The scroll was carried within, its truth folded deep beneath the breath of stone and fog. Above, frost crowned the rooftops once more. The city beneath exhaled slow, each hour drawn long, each breath woven beneath the endless gray. And in the hollow dark, the breath of stone grew stronger. Morning came unnoticed. Chang'an remained folded within its veil. No sun broke the gray. No warmth touched the stone. The city breathed soft and slow beneath the lingering mist. In the scholars' quarter, lamps burned against the dim. The glow traced thin shadows upon worn walls. A lone scribe worked by flickering light. The brush moved in careful rhythm, each stroke a tether drawn from silence. Beside him, the letter remained unopened, its seal cracked with cold. The words within waited still. The ink upon bamboo mattered more, each line drawn beneath breath held thin by hunger. Outside, footsteps whispered faint upon the stone. A courier's path wound narrow through the mist. The scroll case across his shoulder bore news grown heavy with delay. No voice met him. No gaze followed his passing. At the river's bend, boats rocked beneath unseen hands. Nets hung slack. A ferryman stood watch beside the prow. His breath rose pale against the gray. The current moved beneath him, soft and unseen. No fare had crossed, yet still he waited. In a shuttered shop, a merchant traced faded marks upon a ledger. The numbers thinned with each line. Goods near gone. The ink dried beneath a weary hand. Outside, the street wore silence as a cloak. Along the market's edge, stalls stood hollow beneath sagging cloth. A lone trader bound her bundles with slow fingers. The knots held. The breath she drew was thin. No buyer would come. Still, the hands moved steady. At the northern wall, guards stood close beneath heavy cloaks. The road beyond remained a pale unknown. Lanterns swayed slow upon the parapet. No rider approached. No word had come. The hush grew thicker still. In a low house, a mother stirred thin broth above a waning flame. The child within her arms slept fitful beneath the folds of cloth. Each breath rose soft. The mother's voice hummed faint through the hush. No song, only presence. Within the kitchens, bowls were filled with practiced care. The grain stretched past its yield. Still the ritual held, each ladle drawn with steady grace. No word passed. The faces wore the knowing. The gesture remained. In the weaver's quarter, the loom stood beneath dust. Threads unwound upon the floor. A spool rolled slow beneath the faint draft. The weaver traced the pattern with still fingers. No cloth would be drawn. Yet the loom remained, silent as breath. Along the alleyways, beggars huddled beneath worn cloth. The brazier burned low. One passed a scrap of wood toward the flame. Its glow flickered faint within hollow eyes. The hush deepened, each moment drawn long beneath the gray. At the palace gate, another letter arrived. The seal bore famine's mark. No words passed between unseen hands. The scroll was carried within, its truth drawn heavy beneath the breath of stone. Above, frost veined the rooftops. The city beneath exhaled slow. Each hour stretched thin, each breath folded beneath the endless shroud. And through forgotten corridors, soft footsteps echoed. The hours slipped without measure. Chang'an lay bound in gray breath. The fog pressed close against timber and stone. No bell marked the turning of time. The city moved slow, unseen beneath its folds. In the scholars' quarter, lamps flickered weak. The flame upon one desk guttered low. A scribe bent above bamboo, brush tracing faint lines. Each stroke drawn with care, though fingers trembled. The ink thinned with each breath. Beside him, the letter remained untouched. Its seal wore the mark of distant famine. The words within waited beneath the hush. The scribe's gaze lingered, then fell away. The brush moved once more. Outside, a courier moved through narrow lanes. The scroll case upon his shoulder bore fresh seal. His path wound soft beneath the fog. Footsteps echoed faint against the damp stone. No gaze followed. No voice called. At the river's bend, the boats lay still. Nets gathered weight beneath the mist. A ferryman watched the pale water in silence. The current flowed unseen beneath its skin. No fare had come. Still, the watch was kept. In a shuttered shop, a merchant closed his ledger. The count grew thinner with each mark. Goods had waned. Hope thinner still. The street beyond lay empty. Breath rose faint against the glass. Along the market's edge, stalls stood hollow beneath sagging cloth. A lone trader wrapped her wares beneath worn canvas. Each knot tied slow. The breath she drew was thin. The hours would pass unseen. At the northern wall, guards paced beneath cloaks drawn tight. Lanterns swayed soft upon the stone. The road beyond held no promise. A scout had not returned. The hush weighed heavier with each watch. In a low house, a mother watched thin broth simmer. The flame beneath grew faint. The child within her arms slept beneath worn cloth. Breath rose shallow. The mother's voice hummed soft, a thread drawn thin through the dark. Within the kitchen's bowls were filled with care worn thin by hunger. The portions stretched past reason. Still, the gesture held. No voice questioned. The ritual moved beneath the hush of breath and smoke. In the weaver's quarter, the loom stood bare. Threads unwound upon the floor. A spool rested still within dust. The weaver traced the pattern with still fingers. No cloth would be drawn. Yet the loom remained, silent beneath the breath of stone. Along the alleyways, beggars gathered beneath thin cloth. The brazier burned low. One passed a scrap toward the fading flame. Its glow flickered faint within hollow eyes. The hush deepened, breath drawn slow. At the palace gate another letter arrived. The wax bore the weight of loss. No word passed. The scroll was carried within, its truth folded beneath the breath of the city. Above, frost traced pale veins across the rooftops. The city beneath exhaled slow, each hour drawn long beneath the endless gray. And beneath the nave, a forgotten light flickered alone. Night settled thick and close. Chang'an lay swaddled beneath the fog, its breath drawn slow beneath layers of stone and silence. The gray pressed heavy upon the city's bones. The stars remained unseen. The moon wore no face. The streets moved faint beneath the hush. A lantern's glow traced pale circles upon slick stone. Shadows shifted with no weight, no sound. The breath of the city stretched thin beneath the folds of dark. In the scholars' quarter, lamps flickered behind the lattice. Their light swayed soft against the mist beyond. A lone scribe bent above bamboo, brush steady in tired hand. Each line drawn was a thread against the hush. Ink thinned beneath the weight of cold. Beside him, the letter lay untouched, its seal marked with distant loss. The words within waited beneath the fold. His gaze lingered once more, then turned to the ink. The breath of duty held firmer than the breath of grief. Outside, footsteps echoed faint upon worn stone. A courier crossed the silent street. The scroll case upon his shoulder bore no new mark, yet still the path must be traced. The fog swallowed each step. The city exhaled around him. At the river's bend, boats rocked slow in unseen hands. Nets gathered frost where water once clung. A ferryman stood watch upon the dock. His gaze traced the flow beneath the gray. The current spoke in whispers, soft shapes beneath dark skin. No fare had come. Still, he waited. In a shuttered shop, a merchant closed his ledger with careful hands. The sums were fewer. The coin grew thin. The street beyond lay empty. The frost upon the glass caught the breath of the lamp, soft, fleeting. No voice rose. Along the market's edge, stalls lay beneath sagging cloth. The breath of traders moved unseen behind shuttered doors. One wrapped her bundle slow, threadbare cloth folded beneath trembling fingers. The knots held. The hush deepened. At the northern wall, the watch stood close. Cloaks hung heavy upon tired frames. The road beyond remained unseen. A scout had not returned. Lanterns swayed with hollow light. No word was spoken beneath the frost-stained air. In a low house, a mother drew her child beneath worn cloth. The hearth burned faint, the broth grown thin. Her voice rose soft, a song drawn from no words. The child's breath warmed her shoulder. The hush pressed close against them both. Within the kitchens, steam drifted pale through dark beams. Bowls were filled with measured care. Each portion thinned beyond reason. The ritual held steady. Hands moved with grace worn by hunger. No sound stirred beyond the clatter of ladles. In the weaver's quarter, the loom lay untouched. Threads unwound across cold boards. The weaver traced them slow with pale fingers. No coin had come, no cloth would leave, yet still the loom remained, a silent witness to breath drawn thin. Along the alleyways, beggars gathered beneath frostbitten stone. A brazier burned low. One passed a strip of cloth toward the flame. The glow caught within hollow eyes. No voice rose. The hush held them, breath drawn shallow beneath the endless gray. At the palace gate, another letter arrived. The wax bore famine's seal. The scroll passed unseen into the hall. No word met its bearer. Its truth folded beneath the breath of stone and shadow. Above, frost crowned the rooftops in silver thread. Chimneys breathed faint streams into the dark. The city beneath lay bound in breath drawn slow, each hour folded beneath the veil. And deep within the stone, a voice waited still.